Hello, my name is Tony. British pulp sci-fi movies of the 50s and 60s, practically a standalone genre, and one that I, as a youngster, fell hopelessly in love with. The Quatermass Experiment, Quatermass 2, Quatermass in the Pit, The Day of the Triffids, Night of the Big Heat, Island of Terror, The Day the Earth Caught Fire, The Earth Dies Screaming, The Night Caller, Moon Zero 2. Most of these films were low-budget affairs, usually featuring a stock American actor of something less than superstar status to boost the chances of stateside attention, and they relied on inventive tactics and sensational marketing to snag the imaginations of an audience and magnetize them into a theatre. You only have to look at the posters to get some idea of the strategies employed. Some of these films were faced with a bit of an uphill struggle. Those that chose to depict or involve British space missions, for example. The British space programme of the time had the budget and technology to just about pay for the matches and hardware to launch a standard fireworks rocket from a milk bottle come bonfire night. So any science fiction movie about manned British space flight was already top heavy on the fiction and seriously low on the science. Still, thanks to the Dunkirk spirit, Mad Dogs and Englishmen and all that malarkey, it didn't stop anyone from having a bloody good crack at it. Fast forward to the early 80s. Imagine that Cannon Studios signed a 3-picture deal with Tobe Hooper, director of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Poltergeist. Imagine they thought, hey, let's give the guy a $25 million budget and let him replicate those glory days of low-budget Brit sci-fi, minus the polystyrene sets, glossy PVC costumes, cardboard props, and cheapo plastic models. Imagine they thought, let's have him base it on that obscure Colin Wilson novel, The Space Vampires, we bought the rights to for some reason. Hell, we'd have a solid gold blockbuster on our hands. No question, motherfuckers. Ah well, the road to hell is littered with those ideas that seemed like good ones at the time. Off of the back of whatever anyone was drinking, smoking or snorting, of course. The source material for the film, the novel, should have been something of an early warning. I've never read it, but the title alone, The Space Vampires, leads me to believe, rightly or wrongly, it isn't exactly the modern day literary equivalent of Tess of the fucking D'Urbervilles. It may be a brilliant sci-fi novel for all I know or care, but then again, once you know a little about the author... Colin Wilson was one of those quintessential, egomaniacal, pretentious English eccentrics. A self-styled philosopher, writer and university lecturer. He was also a self-confessed knicker fetishist who told army recruitment he was a homosexual to avoid national service. In his autobiography, he confessed to the upskirting of university students in America using a glass-bottomed coffee mug to aid his obsession. He wrote over 110 books on diverse subjects like true crime, UFOs, alien abductions, the occult, serial killers, and the lost city of Atlantis. He was a fan and critic of H.P. Lovecraft and supporter of Oswald Mosley, the leader of the British Fascist Party, the British Union of Fascists. He was on friendly terms and communicated regularly with convicted child murderer Ian Brady, a thoroughly irredeemable paedophile sadist. A novel by him, titled The Space Vampires, must therefore, I imagine, be an absolute hoot. One day, if I can muster the motivation or truly find myself lost for anything better to do, I might force myself to read it. Don't hold your breath, though. Wilson shares something with many other novelists out there that never ceases to amuse me. I'll start with what he had to say about Lifeforce. John Fowles once told me that the film of his book The Magus was the worst movie ever made. After seeing Lifeforce, I sent him a postcard telling him that I had gone one better. Let's get this straight. So you write a novel. A movie studio offers to pay you a shitload of cash for the film rights. Great, you think. I'm gonna be rich. You sell those rights, count the loot, and laugh your grasping arse off all the way to the bank. You're happy. Until, that is, you see the completed film. And it's nothing like the novel you wrote. Then you get all salty and indignant about it, seeming to think you have the moral and artistic right to start publicly bitching and moaning. Quick lesson on how the world works. It should be obvious, but still. You own a car you built yourself from scratch, a labour of love no less. You sell that car. The new owner spray paints it screaming fluorescent pink, hangs fluffy green dice from the rear view mirror and enters it in demolition derbies until the wheels fall off, the engine drops out and is smashed to shit and barely fit for scrap. You have absolutely no right whatsoever to complain, idiot. You surrendered that when you sold and they bought. What happens after is nothing to do with you, none of your fucking business. Because your permission has been granted, paid for in full. No one made you sell it, no one made you give up ownership and control, but you wanted the dough, you greedy prick, so you willingly and knowingly went through with the deal. Are these writers really that naive? I don't think so. What the fuck did you think was going to happen? Filmmakers would honour your original artistic vision, slavishly adhere to it, respect your precious integrity? Once those rights are sold, your piece of pulp is in the hands of a multitude of disparate elements. The studio bosses, the director, the screenwriters, the producer, the guy who makes the fucking tea for the lighting crew. And they all have these things, called opinions and ideas. It's a goddamn threshing machine. But hey, count your blessings. Your novel still exists just as you wrote it. So if anyone feels the urge to avail themselves of your original vision, they can, should they feel so inclined. I guess what I'm trying to say is grow the fuck up now. And if you can't, don't flog your priceless labour of love to a bunch of disturbed sex traffickers out to make a buck. Cause there's always a chance it won't end well. I can't believe you didn't know this, but as you seem not to, this is your heads up. No need to thank me. My pleasure. Lifeforce kicks off with a joint British-American space mission to explore Halley's Comet. Hidden in the tail of the comet, they find a massive 150-mile-long spaceship of unknown origin. Colonel Carlson, Steve Railsback, the leader of the operation, heads a team to explore the interior of the craft, finding hundreds of floating, desiccated, long-dead bat-like alien corpses, along with 3 humanoids in suspended animation in transparent pods, 2 naked men and a naked woman. They snag a bat corpse and the 3 nudists and head back to Earth. Mission Control loses contact with the ship and once it enters orbit, sends a shuttle to explore. The rescuers find the interior of the ship incinerated and all the crew dead. The 3 space nudists are intact, so they get taken back to Earth. Big mistake. The naked humanoids are the last remaining bat creatures who have taken on a form more visually acceptable to the human eye. Matilda May plays the female one, supposedly a representation of the physically perfect woman drawn from Carlson's psyche. I'm not going to argue. She's fucking beautiful, sexy, gorgeous, and for a lot of the time bare-ass naked. I could watch her all day, even when she puts some clothes on. These space vampires reanimate and start sucking the life force, life energy from anyone they encounter, leaving them decayed husks that in turn reanimate and seek out others to drain, like steroidal zombies plugged into the grid. The female vampire, billed as Space Girl in the cast list, can deposit some of her life force in other bodies and control them. Together with her 2 male compadres, after busting out of the Space Institute, they set about infecting the population of London. The alien craft has left Halley's Comet and is orbiting the Earth, sucking up energy in the form of the dead souls released by the carnage. Carlson turns up alive in an escape pod and explains to SAS Captain Kane, Peter Firth, and Dr. Fallada of the European Space Institute, Frank Finlay, how the crew started dying one by one on the return journey, and when he figured it was the result of the 3 humanoids draining them of life, set a fire on board and split in the pod. He crossed his fingers that the ship would never make it back to Earth. Well, it fucking did. Carlson now has a psychic link with the Space Girl because he shared some of his energy with her when he opened her casket and gave her one. Was seduced by her telepathically and had sexual relations with her. As London is placed under martial law and chaos and death hold sway, it falls to Carlson and Kane to find a way to defeat the space vampires and save the planet. It climaxes with Kane racing frantically across a decimated London with a bloody big sword of leaded iron to St. Paul's Cathedral, where Carlson and the Space Girl are getting funky with it on an altar beneath a big energy-sucking light tube leading to the alien spacecraft. Lifeforce is a mad, frantic, wild, and oversaturated slab of sci-fi spectacle. The original script was by Dan O'Bannon, co-author of Alien, but 3 others were brought in to rewrite, and I get the impression that this contributed to it being a somewhat addled concoction. What we get is a pumped-up B-movie that certainly recalls the days of those classic British sci-fi flicks of the 50s and 60s. I suspect this is, to a large extent, intentional. The film looks great at certain points, and whilst the special effects and animatronics don't bear favourable comparison with the CGI of today, they hold up well enough. You can clearly see that it had something of a budget behind it. The colour scheme has that bright, ultra-vivid, larger-than-life element going on, so it's appealing to the eye, especially on on the big screen. Links with traditional vampire legends are nicely established, attributing the visit of Halley's Comet every 76 years or so to being the basis of such legends. I once knew an NHS manager nicknamed Halley after Halley's Comet. That's how often we fucking saw him. And when we did, it was usually a portent of impending doom and shit, life imitating art. Dr. Fallada discovers that a stake or sword made of leaded iron will kill the space vampires, provided it impales them just under the heart. And the events on board the stricken spacecraft echo Stoker's Dracula and the plight of the Demeter, the ship which brought the thirsty Count to England. All passengers and crew were dead by the time it docked. Furthermore, the idea of a vampire draining life rather than blood can be found most prominently in Hammer's Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter, one of the studio's more inventive latter-day efforts. When London descends into apocalyptic chaos with the populace turning on each other, it is distinctly reminiscent of the street-level destruction wrought towards the end of Hammer's 1967 Quatermass and the Pit, further evidence of Lifeforce's 60s influences. In keeping with the tradition of British films utilising American actors of a less than A-list status, and as a throwback to that, we get Steve Railsback in the lead role of Carlson. Railsback first came to prominence playing Charles Manson in the acclaimed 1976 miniseries Helter Skelter. Then he was in the TV version of From Here to Eternity in 1979, playing the role Montgomery Clift played in the movie. After that, it was a downhill slide into B-movie hell. Railsback was a method actor whose method had two gears: faintly creepy, soft-spoken restraint, and off-the-scale, bug-eyed lunacy. You'll get to experience both in Lifeforce. He starts out stable enough, but as the film progresses, his performance flips off the rails and never comes back. See what I did there? It's a play on... oh, never mind. Anyway, just marvel at the scene where he beats on the masochistic chick in the mental hospital after Space Girl has possessed her. Or when he injects Patrick Stewart, yep, Xavier Picard himself playing the asylum director, with enough pharmaceuticals to take down Keith Richards. In contrast, Peter Firth is all cool efficiency and clipped military professionalism as SAS Captain Kane. His performance doesn't really have a stabilising effect on Railsback's hammy excesses, but it's a decent enough counterbalance. Frank Finlay strolls in and out in the sort of part that would usually have gone to Peter Cushing, and any red-blooded heterosexual male who doesn't get some sort of gratifying masculine tingle from Matilda May is very likely dead. This girl was something else. A French actress who appeared in a lot of French films I've never seen and never will. She did turn up in the atrocious 1997 remake of Day of the Jackal with Bruce Willis and Richard Gere, but because of her appearance in Lifeforce, I'm prepared to forgive her anything mostly. Music comes courtesy of Henry Mancini, who provides a pounding main theme and a lot of ambient background music, which he termed a tonal space ballet, whatever the fuck that's supposed to be. John Dykstra's special effects and model design are rather excellent for the time. Alan Hume's cinematography lovingly recreates and updates the visual essence of those old Brit sci-fi relics with a certain degree of style and panache. Critics at the time of release were divided. One called it the most intelligent vampire movie ever made. Personally, I can't go with that. Another described it as a tap-dancing zombie and hysterical fragmented vampire porn. Well, it's loud, lurid, in your face, pretty fucking dumb, chronically uneven and bizarre. But that doesn't mean it isn't fun, because it is. It's not the serious-minded, deeply philosophical, existential treatise that Colin Wilson would have you believe his original novel was. And if it were, I'd probably hate it, with the vengeance of an ancient god of war on a particularly bad day in Valhalla. So, ultimately, I like it for what it is. A batshit, crazy, pacey, colourful mashup of the less celebrated science fiction movies of my misspent childhood, incorporating vampire legend and spaced-out zombie horror, complete with a deliciously mind-melting naked space girl vampire. That'll do for me most any day of the week. How about you? Thanks for your time and attention. Hope you've got something out of it. Please feel free to like, dislike, comment or subscribe to the channel. I'm always interested in knowing if there's anything you'd like to see reviewed. Can't guarantee that I'll ever review it, but it may be worth a mention. You never know. Meanwhile, here's a song called Girl from the Dark Star. sky, heavens above, some kind of look in your eye, a mirror image of love, burned into my heart, swept into my arms. There you are, girl from the dark star. She fell from the sky, angel in white, cruciform.